Welcome, everyone, to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, first day with the new tongue, folks. My winger, Ricky Squid 5. Squid, how are we keeping today? Is the heat getting you?
No, not yet. I've survived so far. Um, we'll see how it goes. Playing 36 the next 3 days. That might
Gonna
be a
be.
little bit of a test.
I'm glad we're doing this today. Well, on a sad note, a couple losses for the hockey world this week. We'll start with the younger one, Jimmy Hayes. Was drafted by the Leafs at one point. Died, we think, suddenly yesterday. We heard about the news, and it's got some shockwaves going through the hockey world on this one.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I know the young man personally because he played with my son at the U.S. program for 2 years. Got to meet his family, wonderful people, and Jimmy was just a great kid. I've heard it, I've seen it on Instagram and everywhere, how his smile would light up a room, and it really did. He was a funny guy, uh, and really sad. I can't, I just can't wrap my head around it. Young man with a wife and two young boys, and very, very, very sad.
Yeah, it is. It's never good. And the second one, of course, goes throws a little bit at our youth, Squid, and longtime Ranger, New York Ranger Rod Gilbert, who passed away this week also. For years, there were generations of fans, and still to today, probably, who associate the Rangers with Rod the minute you hear his name. He was
Yeah.
one of those original six guys who put the numbers up, but flew quietly under the radar, but was anything but that. Known for being the ultimate playboy bachelor during his day, he was well ahead of the curve before the likes of Joe Namath being a professional athlete and being a playboy famous. Rod Gilbert was just doing it very quietly in New York, but making a big splash. He was definitely a pioneer. Now, did you ever get a chance to meet him?
I did. I met him several times. He would be at some of the functions, and even when we went into New York a couple of times, he came down into the hallway outside the dressing room and that sort of thing. And he was a real, kind of, how do I put it? He's kind of rambunctious type guy,
Yeah.
French guy, and just loved to laugh and that sort of thing. And so meeting him was pretty special because, like you said, when I was young, him being a right winger, I used to watch him, and uh,
Yeah.
and whenever the Rangers were on TV, and he was a pretty darn good player.
Well, he was, and he certainly scored against the Leafs, and we didn't get to know him as well because back in those days, we'd only see him when he'd come into Toronto, or the odd time we'd watch him with the Rangers. But our condolences to both families. It's never good, whether it's young or old. It's always a pain for the family,
No,
and again, our thoughts are with them all. Well, Squid, hockey's around the corner, but before we get to that, the city has our ball team back, which is great. So that was a little twist today. Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about this, but they're tugging at our heartstrings. That sound familiar? After a promising start,
yeah,
that sound familiar? I started comparing the similarities the other day between the Leafs and the Jays. It must have been a slow day for me to go doing these type of things. But here's food for thought for you, Squid. Think these ones through. The Jays have been taking heat for their recent play, which they should, as the Leafs have after their playoff collapse, and it's still going on. The two young Jays stars, Vladdy and Bo, versus Matthew Marner, have struggled as the pressure is mounted late in the season. Not unlike the other two. Montoya under scrutiny for some questionable calls, like Keefe. The Jays' defense is very poor. Leafs is very questionable. The stoppers, the Jays' bullpen, the Leafs' goaltending are very average. Jays worst in the AL for runs scored after the seventh inning. Leafs couldn't score in close games near the end. Jays lead the league in home runs. The Leafs were third in goals. Eerily very, very similar.
yeah. And I've watched the last couple of games actually, and they pulled one off the other night, 2-1 late. Vladdy did come through in this instance, um, but last night they just got pummeled. and the White Sox took it to them.
Well, he came up to the plate with the bases loaded and hit into a double play to end a threat near the end of the game. So
Yeah.
we don't wish them bad, but it's funny how our poor old Toronto teams, maybe these guys, maybe they've got to stop going to the same restaurants or something like that. I don't know. But on a cheerier note, we do want to say that Squid, your friends on social media, I don't know if you've been noticing, they've been pushing for your sweater to be lifted to the rafters in Scotiabank. And I thought I'd point this one out on a positive note on the Leaf side. Not by any means to toot your own horn, but maybe just more on a little more serious note. Give us a comment on if that day ever happened, and it should, I think, at some point. Well, what would it mean to you and your family besides the obvious elation you would feel?
Well, first and foremost, it would be one heck of an honor. There's no question. I mean, when you get your number retired by a team in one of the top four sports leagues is a pretty special thing to happen, and it would be a big honor for me, for my family, but more importantly, it would be wonderful for my family to be able to be there and celebrate it with me and enjoy it. And I think that would the whole night would be a wonderful evening.
I couldn't agree more. And as long you know, you're going to have to get me a ticket too, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'll do my best.
well, well, to use a term from the Cosa Nostra, I've been into these gangster stuff recently. If they open the books again, just like the boys do for when you get made, you have lots of fans pulling for you to join the Rafter Club. I can tell you that. So it's great to see. So keep the cards and letters coming
Yeah,
up, folks, and keep talking him up. He's a very deserving candidate. You can send me the $20 later, Squid.
yeah, oh, I will.
Well, as part of our look at teams the Leafs will have to contend with for a playoff spot this year, this week we touch on the dreaded Boston Bruins. Let me just touch on this a little bit. This rivalry is a true rivalry that goes back to the 1920s. Now, terrific writer Eric Sveig uncovered a dandy of a story when he wrote the book on Art Ross involving both teams. And I'm going to share this very quickly with you. At the Barton Gardens one night in Boston Gardens, that is, in 1926, it was the usual battle with lots of fights. Boston fans who haven't changed much over the years, screaming and yelling and throwing stuff on the ice. Toronto coach Charlie Query, he ended up on the ice arguing some of the calls against the Leafs because the Boston management was already ice screaming and yelling and fighting with referees, believe that or not. Imagine that happening today. Anyway, when he was on the ice, the fans started throwing stuff at him and pelting him with stuff. And apparently he got hit, according to him, with a hard-boiled egg, and a monkey wrench just missed his head. So this story kind of gained in mythical terms over the years and was talked about, but never really proven. And the battles went on with these guys forever. I mean, Conn Smythe got in fist fights with people in the building and so on and so forth. But the myth continued again until 1939 and turned out not to be a myth because Boston was playing at the Gardens. Shore was doing his usual terrorizing on the defense with Ross still behind the bench. Query had been replaced, of course, by Conn Smythe. That night, though, Query showed up at the rink and presented his own nemesis, Art Ross, with a trophy with the monkey wrench, apparently the one throwing had him, attached to this unusual monument. So there's a little more to the story, but I think you get the idea of what's happening, and the hatred that has gone on between these teams has never faded. The only thing that's changed are the numbers on the back of the sweaters. So now while it looked like the Bruins were heading towards another decline, infected with that awful disease that Squid, you and I both suffer from, AGE, they recycled they recycled Taylor Hall, who I'm still not 100% sold on, and Nick Foligno. And of course, the core is still there.
Taylor Hall, yeah, the core is there with Marchand and Bergeron, who seems to just go on and on like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps on playing and winning Selke trophies and being one of the best two-way centermen in the game every single year. But when Hall came over in that deal, he played pretty darn good for Boston
I'll give him
in the
that.
regular season and in the playoffs. And Foligno, we know, was not healthy.
No,
He was injured when he came
he
to
can help.
Toronto. So maybe with a good offseason, maybe he'll be healthy, and he can be a very effective player when he's healthy. So, I mean, they lost Krejci, though. That's going to hurt a little
That's a
bit.
big loss.
Absolutely. So they're not as deep down the middle, but Boston seemed to find players somewhere, somehow, that come in and fill those roles. So uh, let's not count them out.
Well, and of course, they're led by the core, led by the chief pest, more like Mutt, Brad Marchand, and he's still going. And Leaf Killer, David Pasternak is still ready to go. And the
Yeah.
never aging Patrice Bergeron still continues to haunt us and every other team in the league. But the thing about the Bruins, they have a knack for finding diamonds in the rough that seamlessly
Mm-hmm.
transition to their style of game. Now, you know, being a player yourself, it's easy to say that they look for that type of player to move up the ranks. But you know as well as I do, Squid, that what a player does at the junior AHL, ECHL level is at times light years from the reality of the NHL.
Yeah, there's no question. You know what? And Mike, I would probably say it's more the culture there
Yeah.
as opposed to looking for those types of players
Okay.
or certain types of players. I believe it's a culture. When you go to Boston, this is how you play, and if you want to stay here, this is the way you're going to play, or else you're not going to be here. And that's pretty evident, I think, in Boston for God forever it seems.
Well, we've been told that by many players who've come on our podcast. You know, like guys like Fergus Daou and all these guys who've all
Hmm.
gone through there or gone to know about the organization. You know, I mean, but having said all of that, again, the culture of the team is they're the epitome of the 2-season team. How they play in the regular season gets it done, but they are able to elevate their game a few notches come playoff
Hmm.
time. And as we've seen and experienced firsthand with our guys, and you as a player, if you can't move the needle in the postseason, your next game will be preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that that's when the good teams and the great players they get it done in the playoffs. And you know, again, you can do whatever you want in the regular season, but come playoff time, that's really when it counts. And you got to be able to come up big in big moments. And so far, unfortunately, here in Toronto, we haven't been able to do that. Whereas in Boston and Tampa and St. Louis and other places, they've been able to do it.
Well, and you know, and the thing about it too is it's the consistency that they do it at. This isn't just a one-shot deal, then that they sink off into the
No, no,
oblivion for three
yeah,
or 4 years. They're consistently there, and if they're not there, they're right on the edge. You know, nail banging on the door, and they're there the next year. So that's what every team strives to do, and that's the sort of the end accomplishment teams want to have. And they're again, as I said, use the word again, they're the epitome of that.
yeah. No, there's no question. They're there every year. They're a contending team every year. They're probably ranked in the top 6 or 7 in the league to win the Stanley Cup every year, and they seem to get into the playoffs. In fact, I can't even remember the last time they missed the playoffs. To be honest with you, and then they go on a little run once in a while, win a couple of rounds. Um, so yeah, consistency is probably their biggest asset.
Well, there's another team that we've just sort of touched on. You know, they're going to be a pain. You know, they're going to be a nightmare to deal with all year, as they are. They do enough to get in. So now you have Tampa, Florida, Ottawa that we've all covered out of Boston. Well, I wasn't very good at math in school, but there's only 4 spots available in the playoffs, and there's 4 pretty good teams we talked about, and we haven't talked about our guys yet. And there's still 2 more teams to
Yeah,
talk about, but thank God it's only Detroit and Buffalo. So you know what's going to be happening. There's
yeah,
going to be a battle for that final spot, and it's not going to be. It's going to be a very up and down season for everybody in this division, I would say.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to say, Mike. I mean, Ottawa really, I don't think are going to come into their own probably until next year. They're going to be better. There's no
Of
question.
course, of course,
Montreal, I think Montreal took a step backwards,
yes.
especially if Shea Weber doesn't play all year, as they're saying he won't. That's definitely going to hurt. Um, so I think the Leafs get in the playoffs. It may be the 4th spot, maybe the 3rd spot. I can't see them finishing in the top 2 in that division.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Well, it's going to be a battle. You know that Montreal will be in the thick of it with them as well. So we'll watch with interest. But Squid, it's that time again for this week's Words of Wisdom. I've dug another beauty out for you. Now,
Beautiful.
this one here, we're going to share this one with the Toronto Blue Jays because we love the Blue Jays and we want them to do well. We want them to pick their socks up and do a little bit better. And especially playing the Chicago White Sox. How about that little?
No pun intended. No pun intended with the
Well, how about that little segue moving into that little feature there? That's brilliant. I learned that at Wexford Collegiate in high school. No, I didn't. Now, the thing about it is, now today's words of wisdom, they couldn't come from any higher of a source. This is Albert Einstein himself giving us this one. So you ready?
Oh, boy. Oh, well, I'm ready.
A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. Got to take a chance. Stretch that single into a double. Try to hit one up the gap. You know, all those little things.
Yeah. Try to go the opposite direction.
Exactly right.
Try to lay down a bunt once in a while.
All those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit and run more. Steal bases more.
And by the way, just before we close off, I did get a note from the lovely Deborah. And she just sent me a little reminder to tell you that she'd be at that Jersey night also. So you're going to have to get 2 tickets extra.
Okay. I think I can manage that because they'll probably give me, I'm hoping they give me 10 or 12 anyway. So
Deb,
you would be included in that. You and Deborah would be there, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Squid. And Deb, you're safe now. So you can stop that nasty emails you've been sending me in the texts about all of that, okay? So everybody... and by the way, Jays, keep plugging, guys. Keep going hard. Thanks for listening, everyone. Back next week, same time, same place. Don't forget this week's episode of Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan Podcast that drops Friday at 6 o'clock. This week's guest, terrific interview. We did it actually this afternoon with Jimmy Thompson. Great interview. You guys want to hear this
Fantastic.
one? Terrific guy, friend of ours, but just a really good story, really heartwarming story. You want to hear this one. Tune in and listen. Enjoy the week, everyone. And once again, boys, Toronto Blue Jays, step it up for us. Come on, guys.
Yep.